You clicked for Cartel Gunboats versus a US cutter. You're in the right place. Here's the twist. There isn't a single solid, verifiable public report that spells out who, when, or where. So why is a headline this explosive floating around with so few receipts? We're going to dissect the gap. What's missing, why it might be missing, and how to spot when a dramatic claim is being managed. Stay, because once you see the pattern, you'll never consume a maritime standoff story the same way again. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. You came for gunboats, a cutter, and an instant showdown. That's the promise. But here's the catch. Try to pull the thread, who, when, where, and the sweater doesn't unravel because there's barely any yarn. You get a headline that screams, then a silence that hums. Let's lay it out. You expect an incident number, a named cutter, a date stamp, even a rough grid square. Instead, you get loops of the same phrasing, recycled across accounts that cite each other. It's loud, but it's not grounded. And that's the first tell. Run a mini audit with me. You search. You land on a paywalled blurb that teases sources familiar, a deleted post that once hosted a clip, and short vertical videos cropped to hide context. The captions are confident, the visuals are mushy. No hull numbers on a stern, no Coast Guard radio call, no chart overlay, just vibes. Now compare that to how the Coast Guard usually talks when something actual goes down. They love specifics. They'll throw hull numbers like jerseys, list the units, and brag about interdiction weights to the decimal. They'll mention which district took the lead and who did the handoff. When that machine is quiet on a big, spicy claim, you should hear the gap. It's like a restaurant that posts the menu but leaves off the prices. You can read the dishes, sure, but the most important line is missing, and you know it changes everything. That's what these posts feel like. Maritime incidents usually leave breadcrumbs. AIS gaps where a cutter goes dark for operational reasons. Mentions of Joint Interagency Task Force South if we're in the transshipment lanes. Shoutouts to partner nation crews when they ride along or take custody. If none of that shows, you're not looking at a report, you're looking at marketing. So, here's the thing. If the facts are scarce, we're living in one of two worlds. Either it didn't happen as sold, or it did, and it's not meant for daylight yet. Both explain the empty shelf. Your filter going forward is simple. No unit names, no timestamps, no jurisdiction, no buy. Treat the post as hype until paperwork shows up. Now let's ask why a real standoff, if it happened, would be kept in the dark. If a cutter really got boxed in, why no play-by-play? Because strategy hates microphones. Live details burn patterns. Patrol cycles, response times, what the eyes in the sky can actually see. Once that leaves the room, adversaries treat it like a syllabus. Here's the thing. Operational security is a process, not a vibe. Crews identify what intel would help the other side, map where it leaks, then lock it down. That means no casual mentions of where a ship usually turns, how long it takes to spin up support, or how the comm stack is layered. You keep the door shut so the pattern stays unpredictable. Now the stakes. Cartels adapt fast. Give them one thread and they'll knit a sweater. Publicize tactics and you hand over a user manual. You say a helicopter launched 6 minutes after first contact? Cool, next time they try to outrun for 7. You show drone coverage looks crisp out to a certain range? Fine, they skate the edge. You hint at radio protocols? They spoof, jam, or go dark at the exact moments that matter. Here's a vivid slice. Reveal your helicopter launch times, your drone endurance, or the cadence of your radio checks, and your entire playbook expires overnight. It's the difference between showing your poker face and flipping your cards in round 1. Once they clock your tells, every future hand gets harder. A lot of this lives in classification buckets. Sensitive counter-narcotics and bilateral ops get sorted by how damaging disclosure would be. Sources and methods, plans, and asset capabilities top the list. That's why some events only show up months later in sanitized summaries. Not because nothing happened, but because the investigation, the intel, and the partners needed time. And there's the legal and diplomatic grid. Partner nations want coordination on what gets said and when. Extradition-sensitive cases and active probes gag immediate details to keep prosecutions clean. Break that, and you don't just lose a headline, you risk losing the case. So, secrecy protects crews and cases. But it also leaves an information vacuum, and hype loves empty space. That's the paradox. The scarier the incident, the stronger the incentive to say less, not more. Which raises the real question. If the story's true but muffled, what does an immediate response actually look like when the soundtrack is silence? You hear surrounded, and your brain rolls film, spray, shouting, brass flying. The real moveset is colder, faster, meaner. It starts with a calm voice on the radio, repeated hails, and the cutter sliding into a lane that steals angles. Bow toward threat. Prop wash as a message. Horn notes and flashing mast lights say we see you. We're not confused, and we're not alone. Then the ladder clicks up. Non-lethal signals escalate while the bridge team buys seconds. The helm denies crossing angles. The deck crew stages lines and a small boat. The XO tracks range and closure while the ops center spins up air. One wrong nudge from those fast movers and the play shifts again. The risk math is ugly. Multiple small hulls at speed, no clean read on weapons, maybe a Pangat tucked near a fishing skiff, maybe night, maybe rain chop. Civilian traffic complicates lanes. Every maneuver either reduces risk or paints you into a corner. And both sides know it. Here's how an immediate looks without the soundtrack. The cutter launches the interceptor, short sprint, high authority, radio on blast. Overhead, an MH-60 or another rotary asset vectors in, nose steady, lights cold until they're not. Maritime patrol aircraft widen the aperture and track every wake. EO/IR feeds pour in. Hot engines pop, hands on rails pop, the messy stuff becomes geometry. Spotlights rake the waterline. LRAD throws warnings that cut through engines and ego. Rules at sea run on a continuum. Presence first, voice next, then non-lethal pressure. Disabling fire sits behind clear intent and lawful authority, because de-escalation saves lives in cases. A tight show of force, rotor wash, aggressive but legal positioning, laser-focused comms, often ends the nonsense quicker than a single shot would. Think blitz chess with a shared clock. One maneuver by a skiff forces the cutter to counter, the helo to reposition, the interceptor to block, the MPA to rescan. Every tick triggers 3 moves across water and air, all timed to minutes, not hours. And there's the network. JIATF South loops intel. Partner navies weigh in if the line crosses their water. Jurisdiction decides who speaks, who boards, and whose ROE governs the next click up the ladder. That's why immediate is about synchronization, not volume. Now you've got the map. Outnumbered isn't outgunned when the grid turns on. Which brings us to the uncomfortable part. Foggy stories help more than one player. A buried standoff sounds messy. It can also be leverage. Agencies hate handing out free tutorials. Politicians hate headlines that sound like escalation. And cartels, they love a myth. Fog helps all 3, which is why you get a thunderclap claim and then missed. Let's break incentives. Agencies keep tactics quiet to protect future ops. Less detail means fewer adjustments from the other side. Politicians prefer calm seas. No panic, no market jitters, fewer angry calls. Meanwhile, cartels thrive on legend building. If they can hint they boxed in a cutter, even without proof, that aura travels. It recruits, it intimidates, it sells. Here's the tension. Silence can cool tempers and buy time for quiet negotiations or follow-on arrests. At the same time, the vacuum inflates bravado online. Engagement-first feeds reward outrage and certainty, not nuance. That's how a rumor beats a report, speed and emotion. We've seen limited disclosure mute blowback or shield active interdictions. When agencies keep initial notes tight, they preserve options, more surveillance, clean prosecutions, and partner coordination that doesn't melt under hot lights. Months later, a sanitized summary appears, and the path from contact to custody looks neat. It wasn't neat. It was managed. Information vacuums spawn truthy loops, claims that feel right, repeat well, and win algorithm wars. The more a story rhymes with what people expect, the faster it spreads. Accuracy gets edged out by virality. Think of it like fog of war as a service. Everyone rents a piece of the haze. Agencies rent it to protect methods. Politicians rent it to keep the temperature down. Cartels rent it to look bigger than they are. Different goals, same fog machine. So how do you cut through? Use media literacy tools. Verify hull numbers from visuals when possible. Check AIS tracks for plausible movement windows or sudden gaps that align with ops. Cross-reference multilingual local outlets to see if coastal chatter backs the claim. If the pieces don't cohere, don't force the puzzle.